Now, export is a very important element of any economy, right? Especially the Nigerian economy as it is today. All right? So I would want one person here who's confident, that they know what export is, to please stand up and tell us what export is. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Export,
yes,
basically means goods or services or services produced in one country or sold in another country or a buyer abroad.
Okay, beautiful. That's what it is essentially. Okay, so that's what export is. For those of you who said you don't know what export is, export is basically the movement of goods and services from one country to another. So it has to, for you to have exported commodities or services, need to have crossed borders, right? So, but the problem that the major problem is that when we talk about export, most Nigerians think USA, Germany, Canada, and so they don't count Togo, Kenya, Ghana, right? So we don't count these countries, and that's why a lot of us are not making money from export. Because the commodities that we have, plastics, most of the plastics used in Malawi the last 30 years come from Nigeria. And so there are Igbo people who have been shipping plastics from Aba through Calabar, yes, all the way to Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Malawi, right? And they're making so much money, right? It's just that a lot of them operate what we call informal export. And so usually they don't work with the firm NXP, and so their trade is not really captured. Their trade is not really captured. But there are even people who have been making millions, trading between, Aba and Malabo and, the countries in that region, right? So when you talk about export, it's not just about USA, it's not just about, Canada or any of these Western countries. You think their currency is very valuable, right? Now, it might interest you to know that Kenya, $100 in Kenyan shillings is about 15,000 Kenyan shillings, gives you about $100. That is to say that the Kenyan shilling is actually valuable. Now, compare it to the Nigerian naira against the dollar, which is 790 as at yesterday, right? 790 naira per dollar. That is to say, for every $100, you're getting 79,000. So the Kenyan shilling is actually very valuable. And commodities like the very common Indomie, the Indomie that you neglect, are selling very well in Kenya. And so the question is, if Indomie is selling very well in Kenya, why are you not exporting Indomie to Kenya? Right? Somebody talked about bitter cola. Madam Kora talked about bitter cola, right? Why are you not exporting bitter cola? Okay? There's a large community of Nigerians in the UK, in Europe, in America. I saw a video about a month and a half ago. So a woman went to an African store and was lamenting that they were buying Gary. She's buying Gary for €5, 500 grams or so. It wasn't up to a kilo. €5 for 500 grams of Gary. So why are you not exporting Gary? Now, I want to tell you a few things before I go into my presentation call. Now, I predicted about 2 years ago that we are quickly getting to that place where a dollar is going to exchange for 1,000 naira. The videos are there, right? And so we are quickly getting there, right? And so what that really means is that minimum wage in Nigeria is what? 30,000 naira. A bag of rice is how much? That is to say that if you have a job and what you earn is 30,000 naira, which is the minimum wage, you're not just poor, you're poorer than a church rat. And that is not to insult anybody. The situation is really dire in Nigeria, and nobody can survive unless you actually begin to work smart, right? So the federal government of Nigeria does not expect you to survive. Actually, it looks like they want you to die. That's what it looks like. Because how will minimum wage be 30,000 naira? And a liter of petrol is selling for 520 official price. Some places it sell for as much as 700 naira, right? It means that they really don't expect you to survive. And they're talking about increasing salaries for public officials by 114%. So that is to say, they are the only ones that Nigeria is meant for. Every other person should go to hell. So a government that thinks like that does not really want you to survive. And so one thing I know about Nigerians is that Nigerians are very dogged people. In the midst of sufferings, Nigerians at one point were tagged to be the happiest people on earth. In the midst of poverty. Right? In the midst of poverty, in the midst of currently about 101 million Nigerians are poor. And yet we're very happy. We're still very happy. Look at all of you shining, smiling, with fuel selling at 520. Right? And people like that are not beaten. So that no matter what the federal government of Nigeria does, Nigerians will always survive. But the problem is that we're not surviving smartly. Because what happens is that we're all smiling, suffering and smiling. Somebody will suddenly fall and die and say, in the village, you know? Stress. How that person is gone. I say, no, in the village, you know? Every other person continues until somebody else falls. I say, in the village, you know? But then the point is that we live in a country where stress for the common man is really very high. Okay? But the problem is that we're not working smart. Nigeria is a blessed country. If you look at the NEPC, we have a lot of publications, and I've asked a lot of people that I mentor about NEPC publications, and a lot of them don't know about it. These are some of it, right? You should. That's another problem we have as Nigerians. We don't invest in ourselves, self-development, personal development. Okay, we believe in food. We think food, we think bag of dairy, we think bag of rice, right? We think about petrol, like I'm walking on. So I have to make sure that I have 1,000 naira at least to buy fuel for generators, right? But then when it comes to self-development, personal development, what are you doing about your personal development? Because that's really what is going to pull you out of poverty. You know, what you do about knowledge, what you do about acquiring knowledge is actually what is going to pull you out of poverty. But we do not place premium on personal development. So if you are sitting down here today, I encourage you to please make sure you visit NEPC. Ask them about their publications. Ask them what they can do to help your business grow, right? What they can do to help grow your personal and family income. This what we're doing here today is part of it, right? So I believe that I'm going to give up a lot of my knowledge to help you advance your export business. But you really need to invest in personal development. Now, export is an employer of labor. And coincidentally, no country can do without export, right? But in this part of Nigeria, Igbo land, we do more of imports than exports, right? And then we actually think we're very wealthy people. Yes, we're wealthy people. A lot of people are wealthy, making money through trade, right? But the problem is that when you talk about trade in a country like Nigeria, you have to consider there's something we call GNI. GNI is gross national income. Now, if an investor is coming from overseas to come and invest in any country, one of the indices they look at is what we call GNI, the gross national income. Because if I'm going to invest in Nigeria and I'm not Nigerian, right? I want to know the income size of the people who are going to patronize my business. And so if I see that their GNI is nothing to write home about, I don't want to go to that country. Because really, the federal government of Nigeria is playing with the masses. We're talking about raising salaries. And they actually think that when we raise your salaries, they're doing you a favor. They're not doing you a favor. I understand why they're doing that. IMF is actually the reason why Tinubu is doing what he's doing today. They don't want us to actually break free from poverty, right? Because if you're grappling with poverty, you won't have time to worry about your resources that they are stealing. So they are doing all of these things to ensure that there's still poverty in the country. But the point is this: the gross national income in Nigeria is very low. And so that means if I open a boutique right now, there are not many people in this town who can actually take out money that they're supposed to use to feed their family to come and patronize that boutique. So that means that my boutique will not really do well, right? Because people think about food much more than today, present day Nigeria, people think about food much more than they think about clothing. Do you understand? So there are certain businesses that will not survive in the present day Nigeria. And so I wrote an article a few months ago, and I was talking about certain commodities quickly entering into the lottery list, what I call the lottery list. Gas was one of them, was one of the first ones to enter the lottery list. I mean, the cooking gas, right? Today, gas is selling at how much? Really? Eight? Oh, really? It's coming down, strangely. Okay, but when I wrote this article, gas was selling at 10,000, right? At 10,000, how many Nigerians who earn 30,000 minimum wage can afford to buy a 12.5 cylinder gas? Not many. And so what that does to the gas industry is that a lot of them will begin to shut down. And as they shut down, what would they do? They lay off staff. As they lay off employees and staff, what happens? Poverty increases in society. Yeah. So prostitution increases, armed robbery increases, kidnapping increases, crime increases essentially, right? And so governments that understand the importance of the citizens ensure that their citizens earn enough salaries. Because when your citizens earn enough salaries, what you are doing is that you're stimulating trade, you're stimulating purchases. And so if you give the citizens purchasing power, they spend more money. If my sister here earns 650,000 a month, and this person earns 1 million a month, and this person earns 450 a month, depending on our academic qualifications, right? What that means is that we're not really struggling. Okay? So we don't necessarily have to draw a scale of preference. How many of you know what a scale of preference is in economics? So if people actually draw a scale of preference when resources are scarce. And so you are forced to draw a scale, and then you put the most important things at the top of the list and the less important things at the bottom of the list. That's what happens when the economy is in a bad shape, right? And that's what most Nigerians are doing. And so if you look now, gas is somewhere down there. Shoes are somewhere down there. Even bread now has gone into the lottery list. A lot of people are moving bread down there on the list. Bread abrozi a necessity anymore. Because bread is selling at 1,000 something, right? So many Nigerians can't afford to buy bread anymore. Now the funny thing and the strange thing is that gas got expensive and Nigerians moved to charcoal. Many Nigerians moved to charcoal. Yes. Charcoal is also quickly moving into the lottery list. Yes. So that is to say that very soon, the average Nigerian family will not be able to use neither gas or charcoal. And so what do you want them to do? Die. That's what it means. So you see, that is the kind of country we live in, right? And so the government is not worried about the gross national income. If I were the president of Nigeria today, one of the first things I will do is to raise minimum wage and put a series of policies in motion to ensure that Nigerians earn enough salaries. Because the more Nigerians earn, the more they spend, the more you spend, the more businesses grow. And the more businesses grow, the higher the taxes they pay. The more taxes they pay, the more the country grows and the economy, blossoms. And what that means is that the gross national income will be up there and more investors will come and we will achieve what we achieve, foreign direct investment. And then we'll have a very healthy nation where everybody is happy.